Bedding area deer hunting. You know, one of the things about Camp Kicking Bear and having this event here allowed us to get into a lot of little nooks and crannies of the property, and one of those was a bedding area that we plan to hunt and how we've set that up. So we had a lot of questions out there. We're going to bring that to you guys, and I hope you enjoy the discussion. Again, a lot of the questions that people are asking right now out in the field are questions you guys are going to have, are the same ones I see in comments on YouTube, and the questions I get when I'm in the field with my clients. So enjoy this little segment. Hunting bedding areas accounts for about 70% of my mature bucks every single year throughout the decades, and I think you'll enjoy the strategies that go along with it. So this is going to be our last stop in the tour, and we'll head out after this to the vehicles. And Dante, you like this spot, right? Kinda? Yeah, half and half. He had a good opportunity here. That water hole right there, I don't want a water hole back there because we already have great bedding movement here. We don't need that water hole. It's too close to the other one. The other one is a completely separate stand that we can use morning, evenings, get a lot more use out of it generally for the entire season. So I'd rather have that water there. We're taking this one out. This is a 100 gallon. It's 24 inches deep, where that 300 gallon is 300 and it's 25 inches deep. Even the 150 is only 25 inches deep. So the 100 gallon is small. We use a 110 sometimes from TSC, and those are 22 inches and you get 10 gallons more. So they're a lot bigger mouth. So those I really don't care for too much. We're gonna take that out, fill it in. But this entire area where you guys just walked on was all switch. Coming in here, you just walked on all that switchgrass. And we're hinging off to the sides, especially on this side, on the south facing, to allow more sunlight to come into here. That increases regeneration, increases food value. And you can see the mount on the tree back there. I think there's still a mount for the trail camera. We'll add probably not too long from now, in the next week or two, now that we're getting caught up with everything. But we'll add a camera there right on that mock scrape. We'll keep that open because we want to mock scrape at every stand location. And do all of you see the stand? Yep. It's right over here. That's that stand we come straight up to from the bottom. The cool thing is it's more through pure red cedar and mix, but they're not bedding in that red cedar necessarily. They're more up in these edges up in here. But you can see from here, when we blow our scent off of this, it doesn't matter what we smell like. It's blown off. It's not going to hit deer down below in the morning. In fact, as the temperatures are rising all the way till 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, nothing's going to pick us up anywhere. Also, we don't have a lot of movement down in that pure switchgrass. Most of the movement's up here and going back. We get movement around this top side right here in front of the stand, right to your right and straight in front of me over there through the white oaks. But we don't get as much down there. So we found in the evening, it's been a pretty safe place to blow your scent. Dante, did you have deer maybe once or twice windy down there, or any at all? No. The Dante sat there, I don't know, a handful of times. We have a buck we nicknamed Stripe now after Dante's encounter. So you can imagine what happened. But it was a little high. So not funny for the buck, but there's no blood, took some hair, and I imagine it's all healed up now as far as its hair being gone. But bottom line is we know with that buck, it's a nice little 8-point, and it'll be a nice buck this year. So maybe get another chance, redemption. But this, to me, we had thought about putting food through here. We obviously have the water hole. We didn't get to hunt the water that much, or this spot, because it's more of a pure bedding rut spot. And we got some chance to hunt here in the afternoon, evening. We'd come right through the top. But with the food plot there being more appreciable, more corn, getting rid of the trailer, and then making bedding here, I thought the bedding value back on this point and sticking deer 100 yards that way, 150, or off this edge or that edge, was more important than just making this a water hole rut stand. I'd rather get the water out. That creates a better stand over there, balances out our stands, and this still is an incredible morning hunt. We won't evening hunt here, but morning hunt, we would hunt. And then I like the idea, the option of going straight down to the trail and access coming out, because we don't have a lot of deer bedding down in this location. They're off the points here, up top here on the sides. They're down in this hollow a lot. So that comes in with getting to know your deer herd a little bit. There's really not much for them down there. It's not that we don't have a lot of regeneration until you get towards the bottom. So if we want to get out there at 10, 11 o'clock, we know there's no deer below us. We can just get down, get out of here. And I don't think we're going to be able to go through here anymore, just because we're going to have deer bedded right up on top. So The switchgrass, we can come back here and mow it easily. There's a lot of switchgrass, if you guys notice, coming up in here. And that's different too. It seems like it takes, when there's woody debris that you're frost seeding the switch into, it takes a little bit longer for it to pop up. I think the wood soaks up some of the water, and it just doesn't get that germination moisture that you need quickly. Where when it's out in the soil here, you get a lot better germination of it growing up. You can pick out a lot more pieces of switch coming in. In fact, there wasn't a lot on this end. We were wondering why, but they've all popped in just in the last few days, couple days. So, so moist enough, and I bet you there'll be a lot popping in the next week. So, but we can mow this, maintain it, but we'll get the water hole out of here, turn it into pure bedding. And with the thermals here, it goes down in that point. So I wouldn't feel bad about blowing my scent that way, that, all the way down here. So we get a lot of different winds. I wouldn't blow it right here because we're almost at level. So in the morning, it's just gonna go right up into there. But blowing it across this end and all the way off, we get a lot of different wind direction we can hunt back here. And that's all our, that way is northwest, northwest wind there. So we're getting northwest winds we can hunt this with, west winds, southwest winds. We get a huge amount of wind that we can potentially hunt in this area where something easterly, southeasterly burns us up on this top. So this is how I like hunting bedding. We could have a buck that's literally bedding anywhere up here. I really don't care that we're that close to him coming in. I don't want to sit up on top and get right in the middle just because it's too risky. But coming right here at the end of the bedding and having a mock scrape here, there's a natural movement down the trail right over there. And it's just an X of movement is what we saw. So most of the mature bucks that we had last year, including Venti that got shot on the second day of gun season, I think it was, or opening day, about a mile that way. Our of course, Minnesota is in the rut with gun season, so that doesn't help matters for a buck like that you might want to let save. But he was here. There were a lot of our nicest bucks were here in this location on that scrape. So look forward to getting the camera back for one thing, but look forward to allowing this to come back up. And this is a spot we expect to shoot a big buck. We can slip in, pass the water hole, get into the spot, and we can have deer come in from the corn here, the neighbor's ag field. We've added a lot more pieces up there to make it attractive for deer coming out to this point in the first place. So, guys have any questions? Oh, sure.
So with that area being coming up and down in that stand with the access and the deer typically not bedding in the switchgrass itself, the concept of having the switchgrass all the way up through this trail, just curious.
It makes a really good thermal barrier.
Okay.
Where the deer they could bed on this side or they can bed on that side, and it's taking the wind that would have otherwise been sweeping over this top and then protecting them where they would naturally bed, which is just off to the side.
Okay.
I've seen bedding area creations like this right here where they've made hinge cuts and hinge cut bedding areas with canopy all the way down the top. And then that deer that's sitting here in northwest wind is just completely exposed to the wind and vulnerable. So we'd see a switchgrass or a hinge cut top all the way along this where there's canopy, and the deer bedding 30 yards down that way. They're not relating to that at all because they took all the cover, put it up high, and now a deer in here can see 200 yards in any direction when the leaves are down. So no protection.
Left and right of this point?
Not right here, but we do just walking down.
Walking in, okay.
Yeah, and then we get into a lot of mixed aspen regeneration, birch, and a little bit of red cedar on this side. So pretty good habitat. And my goal right here with these first cuts was to allow a lot of sunlight coming in from the southerly exposure to get into the switchgrass growth back here. So,
just kind of riffing off her question, what percentage of the work you do is adding features or doing things based on what the deer are naturally doing already versus trying to make the deer adjust somewhat to maybe what you think is a better pattern for the hunt?
Almost all of them, except adding food sources that create new patterns. So sometimes they're not going into this nice piece of habitat along this bench or crossing across this saddle, but it's because there's no food source. And that goes back to, if we didn't have any food on this property over here, the 67, then we can't count on deer consistently bedding over there on that point, let alone, because there's a big point right there, and then there's this one right here. And with those being both sufficiently supported with food, now we throw deer back here on a daily basis so that a buck that's bedded down there, he could bed there, hit that food on the way out to ag every single day if he wants. We control a higher percentage of his daylight patterns throughout the entire season because we have the food here. If we didn't have the food, he might not even ever be here. So we're looking at, I'm trying to, every time you look at a property, and that's why I love hills so much, because you're always trying to look at those hills, and hills define where deer move. And then how can you build your habitat improvements off that to make sure that they're going to be effective when you actually hunt them and use it. So you're really trying to either match existing conditions or those future natural movements that just aren't there yet because of food. And there's nothing else you're going to do. You can create a bedding area, but if you don't have the food, then, and I'll add this about bedding areas really quick. This is something that I failed to mention enough, I think, is that everyone talks about a sanctuary being their bedding areas and where they're hanging out during the day. But a sanctuary, if they're not hitting that food source during daylight and they don't feel comfortable and you're over hunting it and you're treating that like it's not a sanctuary like most people do with food plots, they're over hunting, they're sticking a blind out in the middle, they're spooking deer when they get on, off, deer aren't going to be back in this bedding area. Or they're going to be does and fawns and there's no room for bucks because they would be pushed way back there and there's no room. It goes down to a steep gorge. So to treat the food plot as a sanctuary is far more important than treating the bedding area as a sanctuary, and even bedding area work. And so that's why we focus when you first come to the properties on food source location, where it's safe, we don't spook it, and then where we think we can hunt between those food sources or off the back side of them for morning, for cruising movements, where we think we can hunt near the food, whether it would be with a bow or gun safely, and then mock scrapes to support those stand locations at just stand locations, and then cameras at each one of those. So we're finding this is the mock scrape, this is where it's going to go, this is the tree that we're going to put a camera on, and then this is where we're going to hang our stand, all three of those together. So really back here, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, we can enhance this, we can make it better, but without the food out there and the patterns that we're using for access in the stand location, this means nothing. Okay. And so if we happen to come back here and spook a buck, we got pictures of a lot of different bucks in here during bow season, during the rut last year, and throughout the year. So if we spook one single buck out here, a lot of times you walk in, you always have that picture, we've all been there, where you're hunting a certain buck and you walk in and you spook a deer, you think that was him, it had to be him. Well, there might have been 30 other bucks in that area at one point or another, so the odds are it wasn't. But even if it was, to me what I find is good habitat improvements where you have outside ag for destination fields after dark, then you have a holding plot that's an 1.25 acre size, and then you have bedding area, and you have this movement that's 250 yards long, then deer want that condition. You have does bed up here, bucks are bedding back here, and so another buck a lot of times just slots in. So it's really important to remember that with the food plots, that unless you can get by them without spooking deer, they're useless. And unless you can hunt them without spooking, if you're constantly spooking deer getting in and out of a box blind, then get rid of the box blind, move the location, shorten the food, get rid of the food, shrink the food. It's just a black and white thing. So when I look at client properties, it's purely black and white. If you're going to spook deer there and you're setting yourself up, then why bother? You're destroying the whole land. And so like here, we have 67 acres. If we're spooking deer right there, it's going to have a negative effect on that food plot over there that's, a quarter mile away and down across the draw. So.
Do you have all the brush piled here to keep away from your stand?
To be honest, that's where that fell. But at the same time, that was a consideration that they're just not going straight down to our stand from right here. We're a little blocked. I like that when we can come in and shoot over brush into a nice opening like that. Someone just reminded me, they're asking questions about food plots and use. We were talking about, I see a lot of grid pattern type. I was at a property in Michigan. Most of these are Michigan things, but grid pattern 1 acre food plot where they had about 8 boxes in there that were surrounded by miscanthus grass. And the theory is the buck will have to go from one to the next to look in there and see if there's does. But what I find is they just avoid the whole area. They might go bed it, and that's what he's been seeing for about 8 years since he did that they come in, they might get one picture in October. And so I like those bigger open food plots. How many times have you gone by an ag field and you've seen several nice bucks and does out there all together? And that's not too uncommon for them all to post up out in an open field. You have 40 deer in a 10 acre food plot. So at some point, and I think it was relating to wolves, and I know Kevin O'Brien asked that, if Kevin's still here, but yeah, Kevin. But like wolves up in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin area, UP and Michigan, where if you compartmentalize those food plots too much, then those deer don't want to be in there because they just have a natural predator awareness where if there's a wall between Dylan and I, they don't know what's there at Dylan. And so why are they going to feed right here happily and move around there if they don't know what's on the other side? That was the whole idea of snow fencing, because it was, you know, you're putting snow fencing downwind to block deer from moving around downwind of you, but they don't like jumping it because they can't see across it. They don't know what's on the other side. So I like those bigger open plots. And then we have the smaller ones, but depending on where you're at, you can't get it, it can be too small because it's compartmentalized and the deer feel unsafe feeding in there. So, which is what we noticed with a lot of those compartmentalized plots. It sounded good on paper, but after 15 years of seeing that and taking them out, like he's taking them all out, he's moving his miscanthus, you can transplant it. He'll have some use for it, but you know, really good use because it's already established, it's tall and strong. But that open plot area, we're actually doubling the size of it. And that was part of it too. We want more deer feeding there, so we're gonna make it more inviting for them. So instead of those bucks coming in mid-October and leaving for the rest of the season, they come one time, they see it and they don't like it, then hopefully it'll be an open invitation for them.
So like central Minnesota, some of the spots that I hunt, like if you didn't have the terrain features here, right, of these steep drops and everything to be able to work around, let's say there was 20 foot of elevation that was different throughout this whole, 40-acre section. This piece that you have set up right now, would you access this stand differently then, or would you not have a stand here at all? Or
look at it this way: if this was entire flat, all the way out to the first switchgrass where we went to, so let's say a 40-acre square, and I had all my food on that side with ag at, I'd have a trail going all the way around this back side so I could slip into a nice bedding area with diverse habitat, even if it was flat, and be on that downwind backside.
And so like browse and stuff that's down back over there, you're not going to be concerned about.
I'm going to try to not make browse down there. I'm going to try to make the bedding value higher in here, so that even if there's browse on the backside, there's a lot more reason for them to be in here. But then you go through that depth of cover. If the food is over there 250 yards, they don't want to go 400 yards back. Those does are all going to pack in around that food, and then you're in that buck area. So there's a certain distance where you go back, where even on a 40-acre parcel, you can get around. And then you have that established assemblage of stands where you have morning stands closer to the bedding, and you're coming in on the back side of them. Hopefully you're making a travel corridor for them. You're putting a mock scrape on it. You're creating better habitat cuttings from that point of your mock scrape going forward. And that's why it's so critical, like in a 40-acre parcel, if your food's located in the wrong spot in the middle, you don't have that depth to work with, where you have an assemblage of morning stands here, bedding stands there, because the bedding stands are probably all on your neighbors, if they even get to that age. So you're just hunting pass through, you're waiting for deer to come on and off your property in the form of bucks in that case. So even if it's flat, that still boils down to that same depth that you have to have.
I was wondering, for this specific setup and stuff, what time of the morning would you get here? Like before dawn?
Yeah, it's
daybreak? Or?
You've had some good questions. That one I like, because I look at it like you really have to assess where the deer might be before it gets daylight. And so before daylight, the thermals are settling downhill. So before the sun comes up and brings those thermals uphill, then they're just saturating down below. So if I get in here an hour and a half early, the whole time I'm sitting here, I'm saturating the lower level down 150 yards, almost to the bottom probably of my scent. So I want to get in here more just in time. You're using gray light, you get in here, and then it's not that long before the temperatures start going up, the sun comes up, and your thermals go uphill. So I call it more just in time. You're using the darkness, especially like if we were cutting down the switchgrass over there, if we were cutting through there to get down to that trail, I'm cutting through there where we almost need a flashlight still, and I use like a little half lumens or 1 lumens beam light. It goes up to like 1,000 or 800, but it goes up really high, but I'm using a really low light. So anyways, you can go down through there, it'd be still almost dark. By the time you're getting back here, it's just starting to where within 10 minutes it's shooting light. So yeah, just whereas if I was crossing an open field, we have some stands like the Blade plot where I shot Kermit a couple years ago. If you hunt there in the morning, Dylan and I waited out on the edge by Jim's camper waiting for deer to clear off the field. He got a pretty cool shot of a young buck going across in front of us, but we had to wait for the deer to clear the field, so we went into that at least a half hour after daylight.
Yeah.
We were up on the hill right about shooting light, but we had to wait quite a while to get in there. Finally, it was one of those where they're deer, we just said, we're just going in.
Yeah.
We kind of had to worry about, we just went in.
Blowing them off of a major, like an ag through the forest.
Yes.
Fine.
Not necessarily right where we were watching the movement. Still don't like blowing them off. I don't think we saw anything that morning, did we? Or if we did, it was
No,
a small
that was
buck.
the morning that he was bailing or whatever he was doing.
Yeah. We're out there, we got in, it seemed quiet. We're waiting, it was a nice cold front morning. And all of a sudden he started bailing the corn stubble. Right within like 50 yards or 100 yards of us on the edge. So, oh well.
Do you have a deer blowing at you when you come up to a setup like this? Do you just sit down, or is your hunt screwed?
I would if I didn't have any other options. I'd still sit in here and enjoy the sit and try to put it out of my head as much as I can. But yeah, if I have options and I go into one stand and I make them a large noise, pull my bow into something, just do something stupid, then even if I don't hear that deer blow, if I have another option, a lot of times I'll get down and go to the next stand. What I was saying that about Dylan is he's saying it's 4 o'clock right now and we should start heading back. Ray still have to give his talk. We still have some prizes to draw. I'm going to text ahead or call ahead right now, tell them that we're coming back. I'm gonna tell them to draw the kids prizes because there's a lot of kids prizes, and that when we get back, we don't have to go. Last year we went through like 200 kid prizes, and it was literally each kid got like 5 prizes. It was a lot. So I'm gonna call ahead, and then we can get back and have Ray give his talk, and then we'll give out the big prizes, and you guys can be on your way. So I hope it. I'd rather run later. I don't mind. I always tell my clients I don't work on a time frame. So, and meaning we're not leaving at 5 or 6. It's kind of whatever it takes. And so I'd rather just keep here and, answering your questions, but someone else might have a time frame back at the house. So folks, I want to make sure you check out my web class video series, whether it's how to design your food plot program or how to design your property in general. And we have a new one coming out that'll be how to hunt the rut. But these bucks back here are a testament. Some of these bucks go back to 93. They're even in different states. I urge you to check out those web classes that you can help yourself, help your land, help your hunt. The link is in the description. And also for those that have tried them out, I encourage you to offer some feedback in the comments below. Thank you.